Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Larry Jacobs coming at you from Athens, Texas. And today we're going to start a new series. This series I've titled it, Who and Where is Israel Today? I have a question for you. If I ask you to go out and find an Israelite, and if I told you I'll give you $1 million for every Israelite you can find, now not counting the Jews, now we know where they are, we know where to find them, but if I would give you $1 million for every Israelite, someone who'd say, yes, I am an Israelite, could you find one? Would you look next door? Would you look in the next city? Would you go to other places in the world? Would you search? Where would you look? Would you look in the mirror? Where would you look? Where are they? You see, you and I have been told all of our lives, if you've been in church, that there are only just a few Israelites, and they're called Jews. And that's all of the 12 tribes of Israel, all of their descendants, all the way from Jacob himself all the way to today. The Jews comprise the entire nation of Israel in modern day time. Well, I'm going to show you that simply is not the case. I'm going to prove it to you right out of the Bible. And what we're going to do in this series, we're going to find out where Israel is. And ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you, you will be surprised. Because I'm an old Bible reader from way back, and when I learned the truth about this, when God finally opened my eyes, and He said He would do this in the latter days. He said, in the latter days, I'll open people's eyes. I will give my servants the truth, and they will tell my people and those who want to be my people the truth. But He also told us that very few would believe it. You know, Matthew 7:13-14, He said, very few people will enter that straight gate, will seek for the truth, believe it, obey it, and get on the road to salvation. So I can tell you, for the number of people that may watch this, probably most won't believe it. But ladies and gentlemen, don't believe it now, or unbelieve it now. Don't make a decision now. Enter into this study with me with an open heart. I think you'll be surprised at what you find if you'll let God talk to you. Now, I'm a teacher by trade. I've often thought about how in the world I got to where I am. I was the son of sharecroppers, field hands, day workers, cotton pickers, and things like this, and I wound up with a doctor's degree teaching in college. How? Well, the same way that, and I'm not comparing myself to Paul now, don't get me wrong. You know, how did Paul get to where he was? He was a murderer of Christians. And look what he finally wound up doing. My partner, Billy, and I were just talking a few minutes ago about how God trains people and gets people ready to do something, usually the hard way. Usually these people have all kinds of problems that they have to overcome, and in order to overcome them, they've got to get toughened. And as you get toughened, you get to the point you don't care what people think. You don't care what they say, don't care what they do. You get zeroed in on the Lord, and that's what carries you through, enables you to succeed. Well, being of that mindset, I like to take people all the way back to the beginning. People don't like to hear about the beginnings of things. Just what right now, it's like we're the TV generation. Everything, all problems are solved in 30 minutes. It's one of these things. But if you're truly going to understand about Israel, you'll let me take you back, all the way back to Abraham. And when I talk to people about Abraham, they don't like it. And they don't mind letting me know. They don't want to talk about all that Jewish stuff, is what they call it. Well, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to go all the way back to Abraham, come all the way to today, here and now, and I'm going to show you where the Israelites are and who they are and why it is vitally important that you understand who they are. Because, well, you're going to be a little bit shocked when you find out who they are. So let's go back to the beginning. And it began with Abraham, the beginning of God's creation of this special group of people. He called them his chosen people, the Israelites. I want you to understand something. You've heard me say this before. And again, people don't like it. But the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, was written to Israel, about Israel, for Israel. That's a fact. Read it for yourself. Look in there, see who they're talking to. It's Israel. And for the Gentiles, the biological Gentiles, to become part of God's church, they have to become Israelites. They have to become spiritual Israelites and obey the God of Israel, just as he is depicted in this Bible. And you will be, if you do that, you will become an Israelite, a spiritual Israelite. That's what God said. We have to do this, we have to be like Ruth, the Moabitess, who married one of the sons of Naomi. Remember, Naomi and her husband and 2 sons went to Moab because things were pretty tough over in Canaan, and the boys grew up and married these 2 Moabite girls, and one of them was named Ruth. Well, the boys died. Naomi's husband died, so it was just Naomi and her 2 daughters-in-law. Naomi said, I'm going back to Israel. I'm going back to my people where my God is worshipped. And Ruth said, I'm going with you. And she said, and here's the key. This Moabitess, they worshiped whatever they wanted to worship. And she said, from henceforth, your God will be my God, and your people will be my people. That's what we have to do. If we're Gentiles, that's what we have to do to become a part of God's family. Okay, with that, let's go back to Abraham. You remember about Abraham. He was come from a land called Ur of the Chaldees. Abraham was a worshiper of many gods. There's no telling how many gods these people worship. They just this and that and something else. But God saw something in this man that pleased him. I guess he saw an honesty, integrity, stick-with-itness that you have to have, and he spoke to him, and Abraham believed him immediately. And as you recall, when God said, now Abraham, I want you to leave your country. Leave your family, all of your relatives, all your extended relatives on both sides. I want you to leave them. I want you to take everything you own, and I want you to head out, and I'll tell you which direction you're going, but I won't tell you where you're going. You know what it said about Abraham? It said, and Abraham departed. I mean, he didn't argue with him. He didn't say, now let me give you a better idea here. He just left. And he headed in that direction, had no idea where he was going. Well, because of Abraham's trustworthiness, God made him some promises. He said, Abraham, I'm going to make, and this is very important, listen very carefully because this will come back to you at the end of this series, which is going to take several weeks. He said, Abraham, I'm going to make of you one great nation, singular, one nation. And he said, I'm going to make of you a company of nations. We call it a commonwealth. In other words, I'm going to make this one nation, and then I'm going to make another nation, and many nations, a company of nations, will voluntarily submit to this one nation. And it'll be the greatest commonwealth the world's ever seen, and that one nation will become the greatest singular nation in the history of mankind. Now these are going to be Abraham's descendants. Then he said, I'm going to give you one seed. The people he calls seeds. He said, I'm going to give you one seed that'll be a blessing to every human being on earth. Every nation on earth will be blessed by him. Of course, we know who that was. That was Jesus Christ. The question is, who or where or what is that one nation? And who or what was that other nation that will become this great company of nations, great commonwealth of nations? Well, we're going to find out. I'll name them for you. When we are finished, you'll know who they are. And then God, after he told Abraham this, made these promises, he made those same promises to Abraham's son, Isaac. And then Isaac gave birth to Jacob, or his wife did, and God made that promise to Jacob. And then he made that same promise to New Testament saints, his true church. Though practically no one in the church realizes that they have received that promise, but they have. And we're going to find out why. How did he do? How did he make that promise? And why did he jump from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to the New Testament church? We're going to find out why. So let's go automatically now to Jacob. And understand this. For everything I tell you, I'm leaving out 100 things. Figuratively speaking, there's so much in there that is just wonderful teachings, but that's not what this series is about. I'm going to try to keep us focused and on track. I have a tendency to get off track and chase rabbits. I'll try not to do that. I'll make no promises, I said, but I'll try not to do that because I love it. I love this word, and I just want to tell everybody all about it. But let's go to Jacob. Okay. Remember, God changed Jacob's name to Israel. When Jacob was converted on the way to the area where he would get his wife, or two wives as a matter of fact, he was converted, and God said, because he wrestled with this angel all night long, and he said, I'm not going to turn you loose until you bless me. And then the angel said, well, your name will no longer be Jacob. Israel will be your name. Well, the word Israel means power with God. You know, sometimes, folks, I'm going to chase a rabbit, bear with me. Sometimes, in order to get right with God and really get in there with Him, you got to wrestle with Him. You know, God said that the kingdom of heaven was here on earth in terms of the church. And He said, and the violent take it by storm. Sometimes you got to get violent. Not in the sense of destroying things, but sometimes you just got to get, God, I'm tired of this, you know? I know, I've been there many times. As I might have told you before, one time I got so angry, I destroyed a Bible. I destroyed a Bible. I ripped that thing, threw it in the trash can. I said, tell me what's right or get away from me. I have told God that. Either tell me the truth or get out of my life and stay out. I have told Him that. He knew I meant it. I want the truth. I don't want all this religious stuff. Tell me the truth or I'm finished, he said. Sometimes that's what it takes. And with my personality, that's what it took. I had to get violent, you see, to get what I wanted from God, and that was the truth. Okay. Jacob had 12 sons, and one of them was his favorite, Joseph. And Joseph had a little pride problem. And here's another little rabbit I'm going to chase to give you some much needed information. Even when God calls you, and even when God blesses you, even when you know that you are in the center of God's will and He is pleased with you, you still got to be humble. Joseph was not humble. One time he had a dream in which he and his brothers were out in the wheat field and they were making sheaves. Sheaves are, you get an armload of them, of stalks of wheat, and then you wrap something around them and it's a sheaf. Okay, then you do another one over here. And he said to his family, he said, my sheaf stood up and all of your sheaves bowed down to me. Well, think about it. You know, that's like if you have 11 brothers and sisters and you say, hey, look, I'm number one. You guys are, somewhere else. But it kind of make you mad, wouldn't it? Even though you may know it's true, it still wouldn't sit well with you. Well, he had another dream in which the sun and the moon, representing his mother and father, and 11 stars all bowed down to his star. Well, by this time, these older boys were getting really mad at him. They resented it, and you know the story how they were out tending sheep, and Joseph's dad Jacob said, put on your coat of many colors." I'm making that part up, but anyhow, he was wearing it when they saw him come. He said, his daddy said, "Go find them, go find them, and find out how they're getting along, and this type of thing." And well, they saw him coming, and you know the story. They said, "Well, let's just kill him. We can get rid of him. Dad'll never know it. We'll just smear some animal blood on that coat, take it home, and tell him that a lion got him or something." Okay. Well, Reuben didn't have many. He was the oldest one, and he didn't have many virtues, but this time he did. He said, "No, we can't kill him. So just throw him in that dry well over there. And then when I get back," he was going to make a trip, probably off hunting sex. We find out a little later. But he said, "When I get back, we'll decide what to do with him." Well, here, as he left, here comes this caravan headed toward Egypt. And they said, "Well, let's just sell him, and let's just make some money." Well, I'm going to chase another rabbit with you. You've always heard how the Jews are money hungry, always wanting to make money, always, they rule everything, make all the money in the world and everything. Well, with every characterization like that, it's called a stereotype. All Jews are money hungry, all Jews sell their own mother for $1. Well, in every characterization like that, there's a modicum of truth. Well, the modicum of truth is, of those boys, of those 10 sons that had, or 11, that had thrown Joseph down in the well, which one do you think said, the Bible tells us this, which one said, "Let's sell him and make some money"? Judah. When I saw that, I actually laughed out loud. I thought, well, that there is maybe something to this thing about money and Jews, because Judah is the father of the Jews. That's what Jew means. It's a son of, or descendant of Judah, one of the 12 sons. Anyhow, you know the story how Joseph was sold into Egypt, and he was bought by this man, and then he got into trouble. Remember that this man's wife lied about him, got him thrown in prison, and while he was in prison, he became sort of a confidant and a helper to the warden. And when things would happen in the prison, sometimes he would tell them what's going to happen. He gave 2 instances of things that he said, "This is going to happen to you and the other prisoners, and this is going to happen to you," and lo and behold, they happened just like he said. Well, one time Pharaoh had a couple of dreams, and very quickly. First dream was that had a field of wheat, and this wheat was beautiful. It was, the heads were just full of grains of wheat. They call it corn in the Bible. We call it wheat. But then here came another wheat field, and that wheat field ate up the other wheat field. This wheat field was barren. These people wheat looked really sickly and barren, and they ate up the good wheat. But then he had another dream in which he saw these cows. And these cows were fat and healthy and just looked real good. And then here came some other cows that looked terrible, looked diseased and starving, and they ate the good cows. So he called in his magicians and his occult people. He said, "Explain my dream." And they said, "Well, what are you talking about? We can't. That's beyond anything we can do." So he said, "Well, kill them all." He told his army guys that kill all these prophets, all these old witchcraft guys and magicians and people. Well, Joseph heard about it, And he said, oh, wait, tell him not to do that. Said, my God will show him the answer. So will he interpret those dreams? And he did. And as you recall, the dreams meant that Egypt was going to have 7 years of bounty. I mean, crops were just going to be great, followed by 7 years of famine, drought, when nothing would grow. And when he told him this, the Pharaoh said, well, what in the world can I do? And Joseph told him, well, you need to store it up. He said, I'm putting you in charge, Joseph. And Joseph, practically overnight, went from being a prisoner in prison to being number 2 in all of Egypt. You can see God in this. Well, sure enough, the good years came, and they had built all these grain storage areas, and the people would come bring their grain, excess grain in, and the government would buy it from them. And then here came the 7 years of bad, and everything, we just went to pot and couldn't get enough to eat. Everybody was starving. Well, back in Canaan, Joseph's father and all of Joseph's descendants, of course, they all thought he was dead. Well, the other boys knew different, you see. But they had gone back and lied to him, said, well, he's dead, and everything, and showed them the blood on the coat and everything like this. So they didn't know where, they thought Joseph was dead. So Jacob sent the other boys to Egypt, said, go buy some grain. Said, take some wagons and go buy some grain, so we won't starve to death. So we're going to starve to death. Well, you know the story. Joseph recognized them, and he played the trick on them. He had a lot of fun with them there for a couple of times. And then he decided, well, I better straighten this thing out. Well, obviously, when they found out who he was, I mean, can you imagine the second greatest man in the second greatest nation, the most powerful nation on earth, and here's number 2 man sitting in front of you, and he said, hey boys, I'm Joseph. Can you imagine how they felt? Well, they said they were scared to death, because he had the power. All he had to do was say, kill them, and they're dead, But Joseph knew his God, and he said, don't worry about it. He said, this was of God from the beginning. The whole thing was from God, so I could save you. And he said, go tell my father to gather everybody up and bring them to Egypt. Well, in 1850 BC, Jacob and the 70 people in his family, there were 70 altogether, counting Jacob, came to Egypt. And the Egyptians were so grateful to Joseph that they moved all those Israelites, Jacob, children, into Goshen. And Goshen was the best part of Egypt. It was the part that was watered by the Nile River. And, it was just a terrific place to live. The rest of the world was starving to death because of the famine. And, of course, they stayed there for about 400 years, then became slaves. I knew Joseph came along the second 2 or 3 generations down, and he didn't recognize Joseph. Joseph meant nothing to him, except he got scared because these Israelites were terrific reproducers. They just had tons of children. I did a little math, and I figured when they came in, each of the boys had at least six children. Each of Joseph's brothers had at least 6 children, and that was not considered a big family. And they reproduced so rapidly and so vociferously that Pharaoh got afraid that they were going to outnumber them, that they would join some other group and overrun Egypt. And that's when, and you remember this story, he said, we're going to kill off all the boy babies. And remember, they did. They said to go into these people in Israel, kill off all the boy babies, and that's when Moses comes on the scene. Moses is born, and his mother says, I'm not going to let them kill this one, and she puts him in the little ark, puts him in the Nile River, and Pharaoh's daughter sees him, and you know the story. Moses then grows up in the house of Pharaoh, he finds out who he is, and he gets into trouble with Pharaoh and that bunch because he chooses to go be with his own family. Now we're going to stop there. And we're going to stop with Moses being told who he is. He makes a choice. He goes and joins with his Israelite family, who are slaves by this time. 7 day a week making brick and stuff, slaves. And during this slavehood period, they didn't have church services. There was no temple to go to. They didn't have time to observe the Sabbath. And God knows this, and he's going to bring them out. So we'll stop there. But before we leave, I want to ask you to do something for us. If you like what you hear on this program, now I didn't say you had to agree with it. I said if you like hearing it, if it's something you look forward to listening to, like it or not, but you want to listen to it, would you just check on like? And if you would, subscribe to us. That simply means that when I post a teaching, you'll be notified on your email, and you can go to it right then if you want to. If you'd do that for us, we'd greatly appreciate it. So next time we're going to pick up with Moses. We're going to find out what happened after that, and then we're going to get into some stuff that I'm almost positive you've never heard. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I came through the same system you did, and I didn't hear it. And I don't know of anybody else that did, but you're going to hear it here. Until next time, study the Word of God.